There are a lot of guidelines and books around various things about getting started, changing jobs, getting a promotion. There's not a lot of advice for people about how do you know when it's time to leave. I knew about 5 years before I retired that I wanted to retire. That I was getting. It's jarring to run so hard for so long and then just stop. It's like jumping off a cliff. What is it that helped me survive and thrive in this organization of mostly men for most of my career? And it was my ability to build allies. Women are not going to be able to do this on their own. My leadership in one word. Ally.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Legacy. A podcast where we explore the journey of remarkable leaders. I'm your host, Poonam Garg, and today's episode is incredibly special. Our guest today is Gavriella Schuster, a global technology leader, board director, speaker, and a long-standing advocate for advancing opportunities and fostering diverse perspective in the tech industry. She spent more than 25 years at Microsoft, holding senior leadership roles across licensing, enterprise services, marketing, and partner strategy, expanding it over to 90,000 cloud services. Prior to Microsoft, Gavriella held leadership positions at Hewlett-Packard and Adobe, building deep enterprise technology and go-to-market strategies. Today, she channels her energy into driving meaningful change in tech, serving on board like Open System, Nerdio, and championships like the Allies movement for fostering a workplace culture where everyone feels valued, heard, and empowered to thrive. Gavriella, let's start at the beginning. So you have had really transformational career. Can you share defining a moment that shaped your leadership style or any turning point or challenges that helped you to grow and evolve as a leader?
Well, there's many, right? I mean, I think with every experience, it kind of starts to shape the way that you lead, the things that you think about, and the way you see the world. I also believe that you learn a lot more from bad managers and leaders than you do from good ones, because the good ones, they just make things easy for you. You just grow, you just learn, you feel empowered, you do good work, but you don't really think about it. But when you have a bad manager, you learn a lot. So I would say that there were a few that stand out in my mind. One of the first was very early in my career at Microsoft, where he was not that respectful of people. And I will say, went so far as we were having a reorganization, and I noticed that like there were a couple people missing from the org chart. And I said, before we made it all public, I said, there's a couple people missing. Where are they? Like, are they not in the organization anymore? And he like looked at it and he looked at me and he was like, oh, I guess we just forgot about them. I guess I'll have to have somebody add them back. I mean, it was just so callous, right? And so what I learned from working for him was that it was really important to have respect for your team, for the people in your organization, and for the other organizations that you need to work with, and that you need to have a great deal of transparency. That holding secrets wasn't respectful. And while there are things you need to keep in confidence, there are ways to be transparent about what's going on. And that's how you build trust with people. And then I had another manager who was very robotic in the way they made the decisions, and so data driven that it stripped all of the humanity out of what we were doing. And I realized from that individual how important keeping the humanity was, how important it was to me, to my peers, to our customers, that it really felt like you when you were making decisions, you should be connected, that you were thinking about more holistically and not just about a singular business decision and making that business decision by the numbers. So, you know, I could probably go on and on of what I've learned from leaders where I saw them not doing that well, and I thought, oh, I need to do that better. And then I had this one leader who was amazing. It's probably my favorite manager, and there was a period of time where I was working really hard, and he wrote a note and sent a gift card for golf to my husband. And I and my husband was so thrilled. It basically said, like, I know that Gavriella's had to work really hard. I mean, he was appreciating me as well, but he said, I know Gavriella's had to work really hard and it probably puts an extra burden on you. And I wanted to just thank you and recognize that and give you a round of golf. And I remember that to this day. That was like 20 years ago or so, right? But I remembered that, and the lesson I learned from that is that it's not just enough to recognize and value the people that work for you, but the people who support them.
Gabriella, you had a really distinguished career at Microsoft. What inspired you to transition to broader advocacy and board work? And what surprised you most about this new chapter?
It's a great question. You know, it's funny that there are a lot of guidelines and books around various things about getting started, changing jobs, getting a promotion. There's not a lot of advice for people about how do you know when it's time to leave, and what do you do once you've stopped working full time. And I knew about 5 years before I retired that you know, I wanted to retire, that I was getting to the place that 20 years at Microsoft, there were bigger, better things that I wanted to get done, and I wanted more of my life than what I was getting. And so that pushed me to think about what did I want to accomplish in the next 5 years at Microsoft before I left, and then start to build the plan and the platform for what I would do when I left. And so I had to do soul searching around what are those things. And you know, for me it was helping women to elevate their position within tech, that there's just been this age old challenge of helping women to become greater leaders, having more abundance and to better representation. And and then also I wanted to kind of expand my scope so that I was working with more organizations than just Microsoft. And but I also knew I no longer wanted to work full time. So so that was like, okay, not another job. It's what is the portfolio of things that I wanted to do. And so then I, you know, I had to start building that out. And I gave myself that 5 year runway, which was really good. So I would really encourage people to have some planning and forethought on that, because it is a little, you know, it's jarring to run so hard for so long and then just stop. It's like
Mm-hmm.
jumping off a cliff, right? And so what you want to do is you want to have that next step ready so that the jump isn't as hard and as long, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
giving yourself that moment to decompress, but you're also you also have something else you're looking forward to, right?
So it means you have planned for it, like what you want to do after retirement. So that's whole philosophy you have started of 5 years before of it. Like, okay, now I'm ready for retirement.
Right, right. And so, you
Oh.
know, I thought, well, first, you know, I really want to understand what are the things that are getting in the way for women.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I started my own projects of digging into that. And then what are some of the ways that you can make adjustments to make this better? And so I actually, you know, I had an organization of 3,000 plus people that I could try things out and coach people on different ways of being and doing and creating a different inclusive environment, um, and really challenging myself and my team to be a bellwether and showcase that, we had 50-50, like 50% of the organization was women, 50% of my leadership was women, right? And really take the best practices and the things that worked, the insights into that next chapter. And that was when I came to the conclusion, I was like, what is it that helped me survive and
Mhm.
thrive in this organization of mostly men for most of my career? And it was my ability to build allies, and the allies that helped me. And I said, women are not going to be able to do this on their own. Like, you can't just keep pushing up. It really is going to take everybody to want to see this succeed. And so that means that we have to enlist the men in our lives to support the movement. And that is what allyship is. And so that's why I decided that that's where I wanted to focus my attention.
This is amazing. It's good to hear from you. Now, let's talk about the segment, which is the COVID-19, which is one of the critical time for everyone as a leader. Everyone took a different ways to, adapt into that environment. So we all know that leadership took a challenge, new challenge during that pandemic. How did that unprecedented time influences your approach and thinking? What lessons and challenges stood out for you during that time? And how did you support your team and culture amid that uncertainty?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really, really tough because, again, it was very jarring. It's like we were all like full speed ahead on this train going 90 miles an hour, and all of a sudden came to a screeching halt. And yet we had this pressure of all this stuff that still needed to get done, and we had to figure out a different way. And so, what I learned through that was that, one, it's really important to give people voice to be able to speak about and recognize the challenges that are ahead of them, right? Every person in that environment all around the world was going through something different. And to give them opportunity to share what was going on for them and the challenges that they had and hear from each other. And so we basically created some support networks, some support groups, and created time for people to share and talk and be human. Get better at doing this remote work. Now, we've done a lot of remote work, right? I mean, we had employees all around the world. We had communicated via, tele and, all of these things for years. But it was different when it was everyone. And in a lot
Hmm.
of ways, what I learned is it was better when it was
Hmm.
everyone, because when it's really just you have like a lot of people in a room and a couple people kind of dialing in doing video conference, that um they get lost in that, right? They aren't as connected. But when everyone is remote, then everyone has to pay attention to the cues when somebody needs to talk, when somebody has something to say, being respectful and not interrupting, right? And so there were like a whole new set of rules and norms around running meetings and engaging that we had to learn. And so we started as a team to document what those were, some best practices about doing that. And so it was one of those things where, like, you learn as you go, and then you want to very quickly turn that um, into corporate knowledge, right? You want to quickly turn that into something everybody can learn from, right? So I would encourage groups when they were meeting in small groups, if they found, things that may help make them be successful, best ways to brainstorm, best ways to plan, right? To share that. Right. And so we had these threads of sharing about what we were learning along the way, best ways to communicate with customers, what were some of the new challenges our customers were facing, right? And so it was about a lot of transparency, a lot of communication, building in the humanity, giving people space, helping them to understand. And like the outcome of that, what I learned is that people really do their best work when they have that full level of freedom and empowerment and flexibility to do what they need to do. And so it's important to have a set of objectives and goals that everyone's super clear about, like what would success look like, so that as they are exercising their freedom and their empowerment, they are
Mm-hmm.
heading in the right direction. They keep going everyone keep the ships kind of going in the same direction. Um, and and then coming out of COVID, what I learned was that that's also another adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because people very quickly liked a lot of things about that environment that then they kind of have a harder time adjusting to when you go back into an environment that doesn't require that from everyone, right? And then people are at a different place, and so then it's again continuing that communication and that clarity around how what are we seeing and how do we keep adjusting. And so taking the lessons we had of that
Mm-hmm.
communication and applying that, continuing to apply that, so that you don't just try and snap back to the way things were, because like they'll never be the way they were.
Mm-hmm. Now I have most, because you have talked about like empowerment during the leadership during the COVID times, you have empowered your teams. So I have a question around of it, like, and you have also talked about little bit, touched upon allies framework. So I would love to learn more about this allies framework. How can leaders effectively apply it to nurture a culture of inclusion and respect?
Yeah, I so the first thing to think about is it is in the little things that you do that that allyship shows up. And I say there are 6 actions that allies take and demonstrate every day in everything. And that is they advocate, like advocate as a verb, meaning that you really listen to what people are saying, and you listen with curiosity, and then you identify where there are moments of exclusion, because
Mm-hmm.
in every team there are going to be these moments where somebody feels like they don't belong, or like something was said and suddenly they're not part of that team anymore. And you look for those cues and you listen for the things that might be said that give that impression, and you work to make those moments of exclusion into moments of inclusion, because those not only draw back the person who might have just felt like they took a back seat, but it sends that message to everyone in the team. So for instance, if you were talking and somebody interrupted you, and I said, you know, Greg, it's a great point. But Poonam, I don't think you were done with what you were saying. Would you mind finishing or repeating what you said? Because it seemed really important to me, right? Then that message to everyone says, one, pay attention to what Poonam is about to say, right? So if you were not paying attention, pay attention now. Two, you are Poonam, you are important and you have valuable, you have something to contribute. And in this team, we don't interrupt each other, right? But it didn't do it in a way that put anyone else out. It just made everyone feel that moment of inclusion. And so that's what an ally does. That's advocate. They listen for these things that I call inclusion inhibitors. They're more commonly known as microaggressions, right? And figure out how to turn them into moments of inclusion. The second thing is listen. Listening to learn, not listening to solve problems, not listening for what you want to say next, but listening with curiosity to what somebody's saying and asking for their perspective, making sure you understand what brought them to the conclusion or the thing that they're saying. Um, and then lifting others up. making sure that the actions you take are all about um, empowering people, giving them more support, um, complimenting them, pulling the best out of them, right? So finding the things they're doing well. It's very easy as a leader to constantly see the things that someone's not doing well. It is harder to look for the things someone is doing well and reinforce that. But you are a much better leader and you bring much more out of somebody when you are focused on what it is they're doing well and you are helping them see that as well. So those are the first three. Then you want to um, work on inclusion. And by inclusion in this sense, what I mean is everyone who needs to say something saying something, right? Is everybody speaking up? Do I have to figure out how to draw some other folks in? Or when you walk into a meeting to make a decision, is everyone who should be deciding in that room, right? Or if you're brainstorming, is everyone who has some contribution or expertise in this area, are they present? And so think about the inclusion of the people, right? And then you want to elevate people. So you want to give them an opportunity to have better visibility. So giving them projects that have better visibility with executives, with partners, with customers, with press, whatever it is, that have a bigger impact over time. So you want to help elevate the profile of individuals in your team so that others can see their work and they get credit for their work, right? So you want to make sure that you're giving people credit for the work that they do. The last one is sponsor. For those individuals that you know strive for something different, strive for something more, who you're coaching, you're mentoring, you're helping to, them on their career, go sponsor them into other opportunities, not just those that help you, but sponsor them into bigger and greater opportunities in your organization, outside of your organization. Lay your brand on the line for them. So those are the 6 things that leaders do to be allies to those around them.
That's amazing, Gabriel. This is how can I explain? I will take these allies framework and definitely apply it to my workplace. So now this is a session, or this is a time where I would ask my audience, like, this is an advice you get directly from Gabriel. So with all the wisdom and experience, what advice would you offer to the next generation of leaders like us?
So I think the first thing is that there's more to life than work. And you need to, you will do your best work and your teams will do their best work when they have a full life. And so recognize and give space for that. And for you personally, and this is what I wish someone had told me much earlier in my career, right? Never sacrifice something that's important to you for work, right? Work will always be there, but there are moments in your life that will not always be there, whether that's somebody's birthday or a big game or even just your workout every day, right? It will not always be there. And if you sacrifice being at those moments in your life that matter because there's some other pressing thing at work, then eventually you resent work. And other people at work don't have any idea what kinds of sacrifices you might be making. And so they will never recognize or reward you enough to overcome the sacrifices that you made. So the reality is, don't make those sacrifices. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big lesson, and I wish that someone had told me that earlier. And then I think for the next generation, I mean, this next generation really faces a lot of big challenges. I think AI is going to create a lot of challenges, right? I read something recently that there's the potential for AI to take what used to be entry level positions for almost any white collar role and do that without people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you think about that and you think, yeah, okay, but if there's no entry level, how does somebody start? Right? If you don't start in marketing doing what was considered the entry level marketing, how do you jump to the next level of doing that marketing, right? Or if you're a developer and you don't start with the entry level development and
Mm-hmm.
coding or testing, then how do you become better so that you can move to the next level? And so I think one of the biggest challenges that leaders are going to face in this new next generation is how do we take the best of AI, but
Mm-hmm.
also leave room for the human and the development and the people so that we can get like you want to get people to a higher level of thinking and a higher level of action so that you're really taking advantage of what people need to do that AI can't do, but you also
Mm-hmm.
have to bring people along in that journey.
Okay, this is Poonam's question, Gabriel. Okay, uh, if you have to start over today, what might you do differently?
All the way at the
Hmm.
beginning, if I was going to start over,
Yes. So,
um,
knowing
hmm.
that you know all about it, right?
You know, that is a really hard question. And I will tell you why that's a really hard question. Because I know how things turned out, right? And I'd be afraid if I changed too much about the beginning that they wouldn't have turned out. I'm happy with the way things have turned out, right? And I don't want to go, I wouldn't want to go back and change things that would change the outcome, right? Like I started working when I was 14 and I hit a lot of bumps in the road, but I learned so much from those experiences that they made me who I am and they helped me on the journey. And so without them, I don't know if I would have gotten to the same place that I am. I guess the one a few things I guess I would have done differently is I would have practiced allyship much earlier in my career, right? I think that there were certainly moments in my life where I was so wrapped up in myself or in my own objectives or my own life that I was not as aware of the impact I was having on others or the impact that I could have, the positive impact I could have on others. And it probably didn't really strike me until I was in the leadership position to recognize that. But I think the impact could have happened a lot earlier. So that's one thing for sure that I would say I would like to have done differently is really been much stronger of an ally much earlier in my career.
Yeah, that's amazing, actually. That's really important anywhere. I would say any leadership has to start start early, at least that allyship framework. I love that one. So, how would you sum up your leadership in one word?
My leadership in one word: ally.
Okay. And what do you want to remember for in one sentence?
um, for making everything I did better by being there.
Oh, this is amazing. So, Gabriella, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring journey to us. Your legacy is truly about the people you uplift and the change you have made it. To our listener, thank you for joining us on Beyond the Legacy. Until next time, lead with purpose and make your legacy count. Thank you.